So before we get started, I put on the website, I put on the consultation form, so we started recording consultations, training sessions, Zoom sessions.
Okay.
All right. If I remember correctly, Fitz is just general obedience, it sounds like. Is that correct?
Yeah, he's in the house, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
Just outside of the house, he's
A maniac?
yeah, and he likes, he's not a very good walker, and he's just not very good outside.
Okay.
And
Our biggest problem is he's not a great walker, so then like I can't exhaust him. And he's fine inside, he doesn't like mess around with things. But that's worrisome because I don't want him, he's a big dog, he needs.
yeah, it's really hard for us to get him a lot of exercise because he kind of refuses to walk sometimes.
Sure.
Yes.
How old is he?
7 months.
Almost 8
Oh,
months.
yeah. Big boy.
Yes.
Yeah, nice, good size.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you could have what you wanted with Fitz here, like what would your life look like?
What would meaning if he was trained how we want him to be trained?
Yeah, like would you go to restaurants with him? Would you take him hiking off leash?
Yeah.
Ideally, we would do absolutely everything with him, yeah.
Okay.
But I think ideally what we're looking for is we want, if we both work, obviously, and we'd like to be able to exhaust him before we go to work, But on the weekends, we'd like to do everything with him.
Gotcha. Are you like a 9 to 5 type of work schedule, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Gotcha.
going back in the office, so I'm home with him.
Okay.
Which he's totally fine, but yeah, like we can't, I don't really know what's going on, if he'll actually walk when we go outside. So, and we also retrievers are known to be nice dogs, but like I want him to be well behaved before. He has nephews, we're gonna have more nieces and nephews coming, so like that type of thing. I don't expect him to walk off leash and be like this outrageously well trained dog, but just basic.
I do.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you your options, and you
Yeah.
can choose and can talk about that. So, before reaching out, I'm assuming you did research or read up on how we train, the methods that we use and all that?
yes, yeah.
Perfect. So, this is like, I think, the 4th cream retriever I have right now. Yeah, for some reason, they're like super popular. I get waves with dogs.
Oh
So
yeah.
there'll be a lot of German Shepherds, and then there'll be like a wave with Dobermans and Pit Bulls, and then Labradors, It's interesting how it works. Or it's like behavioral cases, like I'll get a bunch of like reactivity,
Yeah.
and then a bunch of obedience and stuff like that. But he's a good age to start. I usually start dogs at 6 months, because at 6 months, dogs have to treat their pups as like adult dogs.
Okay.
They're a bit more strict, and I'm capable of teaching them to an adult level.
Okay.
It just sometimes can take a little longer because they don't have much experience with stress or handling stress because they're young pups, but we can still train them to that same degree, okay? So remote collar, we train, we're e-collar trainers. I incorporate from time to time, but all our dogs over 6 months are trained on e-collar.
Okay.
Are you guys familiar with that technology?
Yeah, like,
Yeah, I think
we've
it's a
watched-
little positive thing, right?
Okay.
yeah, we felt one when he
yeah.
was little.
Okay.
So like, and it wasn't.
It's a weird feeling,
Yeah, it's like nothing, not nothing, but yeah.
So I'll explain that's okay. So e-collar, that technology is actually used on humans. If you've ever been to a chiropractor or physical therapist,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
the thing with the nodes that moves
Yes.
the muscles. So that's actually an e-collar, okay? It's a miniaturized TENS unit. And so it's only making a contraction where the 2 probes are making contact. So if you were to put it on your thumb here, like in the fatty part, you would see your thumb twitching. Or if you were to put it like on your thigh, you would see your like thigh twitching, right? Same thing for the dog. You put on the neck, we're going to see the neck, or sometimes a little of the shoulder twitch, okay? So it's not electricity as in a current running through the dog's body, like sticking your finger in an outlet. It's just a miniaturized TENS unit. So it's electric, but not electricity is how I like to term it. It's actually more refined than a TENS unit, because with TENS units, there's still risk of electrocution. If there's like water or anything nearby, if you have a pacemaker, they can't use it because of the currents or whatever. There's also a risk of electrical burn if they don't set it up correctly. We don't have that with e-collar. Okay, it's a fully waterproof system, up to a 1 mile range, depending on which model you go with. It's not going to burn the dog's skin. What can happen is, because there's 2 probes pushing on the neck, if you leave that for too long, for repeated times, we get what's called pressure sores. So it's the same thing as bed sores. When people are, they're paralyzed or whatever, they can't move and have to rotate them. It's because of 2 things posted in the neck for a long period of time. Okay, I've worked with dogs that have had seizures or heart murmurs or like medical conditions, stuff like that, and it's perfectly safe to use because it's simply just a muscle contraction. Okay, so the reason why e-collar is my preferred method is because it's the only tool that can guarantee me as close to 100% as possible. Okay, we're talking like 95, 98%. That last 2 to 5% would just be like a emergency situation. Maybe someone lights up a firework, he gets spooked, he's running away. Now, can you get him to come back? Absolutely. It's just a matter of, do you have the finesse to actually make it happen? Because in that moment, it's not about obedience. If he's in flight mode, he's like, I don't know what that big loud bang was, but my instinct is survive, so I'm gonna run away from it, okay? So, we use what's called pressure work, which means pressure on when we need the dog to do something, pressure off once they comply. And we shape everything from beginning to end with e-collar. So most people teach sit with treats and down with treats and stuff like that, and then they add an e-collar as a punisher, which is if I say sit, you don't do it, I'm gonna zap you, right? And that's actually, in my opinion, the worst way to train, because you go from one extreme of treats and praise and positivity, so if you don't do it, I'm gonna punish you. So then it leaves this kind of big bridge that's unanswered. So by shaping everything through pressure, low level pressure, or pressure appropriate to him, it's creating a bridge. So like if I'm walking with him in a heel, and when I stop, he's supposed to automatically sit. If he forgets and I tap him on the collar, he's not like, oh my God, what was that? He's like, oh sure, forgot to sit. Okay, he'll just go into the position without being freaked out by it. So have you ever pulled up and pushed down to make Fitz sit with the leash? I think I saw you.
I feel like mostly I just lift his neck.
His neck.
He's like very distracted.
So a lot of people will pull up on the collar and then push down on the butt, and it creates a sitting motion, right? Because if this is headed to go up, the butt goes down. That's what we would call pressure. Okay. So, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, this is
He wants to say hi.
There we go. So here.
Sorry, he's not great
It's
at
okay.
saying hi to people.
Good. So here, that was an example of pressure, but this is physical pressure.
Right.
Okay. So I'm using his mechanics against him.
Okay.
There we go.
It's like I'm used to going between people's legs.
So here, all I want Fitz to do is not really sit, but to relax.
Right.
Right? So he's thinking, I'm gonna come into your space and you're gonna give me all that touch that most people do.
Right.
And instead I give him direction. Right? I said, put your butt down. Now if he lays down, I don't care that he does that. Because what I'm wanting Fitz to do is not sit, it's to relax.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So right now when I was pulling up and pushing down, that was pressure. And the moment Fitz gave me what I wanted, I removed pressure. Okay, but then he, because he's stimulated, started to get excited, and I kept repeating to him about 4 to 5 times. Now he's being able to sit still for a longer period. So if he lays down, this is more of a relaxed state, I'm going to ease up a bit, okay, because that was my priority. But I was using the sit because that's easier to shape with using the leash in my hands.
Yeah.
But eventually he goes, all right, well, if I want to be here for a bit, I just want to just lay down.
Right.
And through the course of this consultation, you're going to see me just addressing Fitz.
Okay.
And eventually he might just even fall asleep and take a nap. Okay? So that's similar to how e-collar would work.
Okay.
I would put pressure on the dog, guide him into what I need him to do using physical release pressure with the remote pressure going on. And as soon as he gives me what I want, I ease up on it. Okay? So it's pressure off when we need something, pressure off once he complies. And in my opinion, this is the most reliable form of training. So most people do positive only. It's the most practiced, most widely accepted and used training method across the world. I think people can agree. But if it was so effective, there would be so many more better trained dogs, right?
Right.
And it's because positive only in the real world falls short. There's so much more rewarding stimuli for the dog that it overrides the value of what's in your hand, right? So that's where like discomfort stuff or aversive stuff comes into play. Okay. So right now when I was putting pressure on him, there was a level of discomfort. And the moment he gave it to me, I remove it. And I kept repeating that, right? And then this is what I created because I was just putting rules on him. I said, you're not going to do this, or that. So then he goes, all right, if I can't do any of that, then all I'm left with is relax. Okay? So e-collar and prom collar get a bad rap because of how people view it. Oh, that spiky collar, oh, you're torturing your dog. Or that e-collar, oh, you're shocking your dog. And a lot of it is just misconception or the positive only front dissuading their clientele from using these tools. Okay? Now, with the remote collar, one, we get off-leash reliability from the start. That's what it's meant for, right? So recall, if he's running towards the street, if he's running away from a firework, if he's chasing a squirrel, I can make it happen, okay? The idea here is that we do the training so that you're not always using it. You've conditioned everything, but in case something happens, you still have a means of making it happen, okay? So the first thing that we always start with is the heel or the leash walking, because almost everybody has a problem with their dog, right? So here, the reason why we start with the heel is because if you put an e-collar on a dog, it makes them move because they don't know what it is. And their first instinct is typically flight response. So since it makes the dog move, we use heel, which is a moving behavior when we're walking with you, to help him express that need to move, but at the same time teach him how it turns on and how it turns off. Now my style of heel is very strict. If I take 5 steps, you take 5 steps. I take 3 steps, you take 3. I take 1, you take 1. When I stop, you automatically sit. This is the completely slack leash. I don't care what the environment is. It sounds very complicated, but we literally get this done within the first class. Okay? It's a very stupid, simple exercise. It just requires a tool that is able to communicate with your dog and override him and the environment, right? Because if he's staring at a dog and he's like, I want to play, and I'm waving a piece of chicken in his face, and he's like, forget about that. You can't override it, right? So it's very simple. So we always start with the heel, has typically 2 classes, okay? Once we get that covered, we generally jump into recall, okay? Because those are the 2 most important commands, unless we're working with something else like behaviorally or whatever. So it's 2 classes on heel and then 2 classes on recall. And from that point forward, it really just depends on what the owner wants, okay? So the way my programs are divided up is I have 3, 6, 9, and 12. 3 is really just walking your dog, or if you have a dog that's leash reactive, that's what that's really based for, or based on. The 6th class is I walk my dog and I need him to come to me, or go to a dog park, whatever. The 9 classes is walk my dog, I need him to come to me, and I go to restaurants. And then 12 classes is like I do everything with my dog. We're gonna go hiking, we're gonna go to the dog beach, we're gonna go traveling, we're gonna go to the dog park, all these things, right? Then they go, okay, then we want full control. And whichever program you do is completely up to you, okay? Because in your case, it's simply obedience. If you had behavioral issues with Fitz here, then I have to account for the behavioral issues, because that's a variable, okay? But obedience is pretty straightforward. I know how long it takes for me to teach something. The only variable really is how much time are you putting into it, okay? Now heel is almost always the fastest thing that dogs learn because you do it every day. You walk your dog multiple times a day. So all those times that you're walking them, you're utilizing the heel. Recall tends to take people the longest because it requires you to go somewhere. You gotta go to the park. Plus we need distractions, we need rabbits, we need squirrels, we need dogs to practice with, right? That tends to take the longest. Everything else in between, sit, stay, down, place, are really at your speed. So because you can practice inside the house. So heel and recall, you have to practice outside, but sit, stay, down, and place can be practiced inside. So if you're practicing that regularly, then you're obviously gonna have a pretty quick process, right, or progress. But if you're practicing every other day, it's gonna be a slower process, okay? Questions so far about any of this stuff?
No, there's nothing. No.
So, when it comes to transferring stuff, because most people now are training here. Because during the summer we were training at Oz Park. Because at Oz, have you been there?
Yeah.
It's crazy busy during the summer.
Yeah.
Like you have dogs, people, off-leash dogs, baseball games, bar mitzvah, like all that stuff, right? It's a great place to practice. So we were training at Oz during the summer and early fall. But then once things got cold and snow came, well then it's too cold now. And plus there's not much going on at Oz. So everybody's been coming here, aside from like a couple. So here, let's say Fitz's number is 35 in my facility, and he's doing everything perfectly here. Well, my facility is not outside.
Right.
So people's concern is, well, how is this going to transfer to my neighborhood? I go, easy. If 35 works here in a very non-distracting environment or whatever, and you go to the neighborhood and he's not listening to 35, then that just tells me I need to raise the number. Okay? So it's really, a lot of it's just logic. And that's actually what holds a lot of people back in terms of their progress, is they're uncomfortable going higher.
Okay.
Okay? So like, let's say you leave here, his number was 35, you go home, I see you the second week, and I go, how'd it go? And you're like, Jesse, man, it was terrible. Like, he wasn't doing the heel. And I'll say, well, how'd you go? And you're like, 35. I'm like, well, 35 worked here. You know, logic would say, go higher in your new environment, right? So maybe the number is 65. And then once you hit 65 at Oz Park or whatever the environment is, all of a sudden he's walking as good as he was here in your neighborhood, okay? Because you have more stimuli to argue with, right? And that's really the biggest factor with how far people get with their program is, one, just are they practicing? But two, are they willing to go to the higher levels to make their dog comply, okay? So.
And is the goal eventually is to continue to lower the number?
Depends on the dog.
Okay.
So most dogs fall within the range of 25 to 35, and then I have my outliers that are like 80 plus, or like 15 below, right?
Okay.
And like, so like right now that dog just came in because I had another client picking up their dog, and she was like, oh my God, and she ran straight for their dog, which is a no-no. And then you guys came in. So their dog, I saw, was getting really excited.
Yeah.
And I was going bump it, tap, right? So I was helping her do is find the number to override all of that energy in that tight space.
Right.
She ended up on 76.
Okay.
Finally, she ended on 76, the dog sat back and was like, okay, I'm not gonna move.
Okay.
And then she looked at me, she's like, oh, she's like, this is the number. I said, correct. Because let's say Fitz sees a dog, it's his best friend. And we've already done heel, he's doing great with heel. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, right, and he goes, and you're at 55, and you're tapping, and he's just like, no, I gotta get to my friend, right? 65, 75, 85, 95, 100, boop, he comes back, right? So we're not picking the number, he is,
Yeah.
right? So in the beginning, I help you find the logic behind the training, but then you get what we call reference points. So if I know if I'm in the neighborhood, his number is 45, but when I see dogs, it's 70. So if I'm going to pass by somebody with their dog, I would just go to 70 because I know that's what I'm going to need, right? So you kind of just intuitively go up and down as needed depending on the context. And then once you get used to it, you don't even think about it. Like, I don't even look at the remote. If I'm training a dog, I don't need to look at the remote. The dog tells me what I need to know. It tells me if it's too low, it tells me if it's too high. Because if he's not listening, it's too low.
Right.
If he's yelping, probably too high.
Right.
Okay? So the reason why the tool is effective is because, one, dogs are physical animals. They bite each other, okay? They show affection that way, they play that way, they correct that way. Humans are also physical animals. You know, we kiss, we hold hands, we hug, we also kick, punch, and push, right? So same thing for dogs, but they're all about physicality. So I like to think of the e-collar as like a bite on a button, okay? And it's a bite that I can appropriate to the dog. Another effective tool is a prong collar, which is the spiky looking one, right? The problem with prong collars is, let's say he's pulling or doing a behavior you don't want, and you try to correct him with the prong collar. Since dogs, bite each other, and a prong is meant to mimic a dog bite, some dogs are too tough for a prong, and you'll correct them, and they'll override it because you're unable to match their intensity. Because if Fitz is at a 20 and the harshest yank you can do is a 10, you're not going to get anywhere. E-collar, it doesn't matter how big you are, doesn't matter how tall you are, how strong you are. It's literally just raise the number and press a button. Okay, and whether you have a leash, or I have a leash, it's the same across the board. So that's also why it's super effective. So I had a client, she was like 90 pounds with a 150-pound Great Dane, and it was leash reactive, and she lived in Wicker Park, right? And she needed as much leverage as possible.
Right.
So prong with e-collar, because prong gave her more physical leverage, but e-collar gave her the means of shutting down her dog's behavior because she wasn't going to have the physical strength to control that large of an animal. So if I do use prong, it's in conjunction with, but almost always I do solely e-collar, because the more you use the leash, especially if I have someone who's pushing towards off leash, the more you become reliant on it. And I want my client to become reliant on the collar, because if their dog's off leash and something happens, that's what they're going to jump to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Questions so far? Have you done any training yourself with Fitz here?
Yeah, we did a class, which was good for like,
Socialization, not much on the training side.
yeah, like weight is possibly the one that we got the most. But yeah, that was it. And like we try to do commands during the day, but that's about it.
Yeah, I'd say at the beginning we were training him often. Now we're training him less often, probably 4 or 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And it's mostly in the house. It's mostly, like you said, sit, stay, down, place, crate, and that's like it, and wait.
Sure. So I think what you're missing is the application.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like lay down, don't move while I watch this TV show or something. Right? So with remote collar, once we teach the skill, there's a level of homework with it, but it's not as much as people may think. Okay, so I call myself like the lazy man's dog trainer, because yes, you have to put time into it, but because of the tool and the simplicity of it, it's easy to do. And the real important dog training, or real, how to create the functionality of it, is application. And so I think what happens is people practice in these short little moments, and then like when the guest comes over, great. Right? And they're hoping that it's going to kind of transfer there, but you have to work with that, right? So heel, obviously you would work on that every time you walk him. Recall, you'd work on that anytime you're out at the park. Sit is kind of like the least useful command. So really there's what I call a trifecta. Walk with me, don't pull, come when I call you, and then go here, don't move. Okay? So sit, down, and place command are technically all stationary commands. Sit is momentary, a few minutes, right? So it's either going to be down or place as your stationary command. So if I say Fitz down, and I'm at a restaurant, and I'm going to be there for an hour and a half, he's not going to move for an hour and a half. Okay? And the way we practice that is, hey, if you're going to work from home or if you're going to watch TV, slap the collar on him, put the leash on him, Fitz down, step on the leash, you're going to practice while you're watching TV. Okay? So we start finding places to apply it, so that finally, come springtime, we can go out and take our dog with us. You've done it so much within the home, and we have also now consequence, because that's the main thing that's missing is consequence.
Right.
We're going to have functional obedience. Okay? Questions on that?
Things on that?
Trying to think here. There's no real behaviors, like it's just the obedience stuff, right? He's not reactive, he's social.
He's he like loves dogs.
Yeah, so he's pretty.
I think he's just timid.
He's very submissive with
Okay, sure, like he's like long back and
Yeah, like, and he's scared of loud noises, but we try to expose him, but.
what loud noises?
Like, I knocked over a sheet pan, he darted, which would make most people dart, but like those type of things. Or I pulled out a drying rack, and he like was a little freak, so I kept opening it for him. So that type of.
Sirens.
Oh yeah, he loves
sirens.
howling.
Or love them.
Oh, he's like howling?
Howling and going towards them. He's been getting better because we were trying to do the like sit down when they're going on, so he has something else to focus on. So I think he's gotten a little better, but
Yeah.
Okay. So that can go one of 2 ways. So once we teach the heel, that tends to fix a lot of problems on the leash, and it gives the dog a reference point. But like, let's say you're walking him and he heard the sirens. What I would imagine would happen would be either one, he would get stimulated, kind of like freak out a bit, but not as much because he knows he has to stay at your hip. Or 2, he does dart. Okay. Now, if he darts, we have to override that because that's flight response. Okay. Now, I can't make Fitz like the siren.
Right.
But what we definitely want to do is teach him not to run away from you. Okay. So I have a dog that just started training. It's a nervous dog, and I was going to say, it sounds like you have a nervous dog yourself. Is he said that when he's in the yard, if a helicopter comes over, the dog freaks and he tries to run away. So what we're going to start doing is every time the dog runs away, I said you're going to remote and you keep raising that level until your dog stops running away and comes to you. Because again, we can't make the dog like a helicopter, but we don't want the dog running away when we're at the park. Right? Helicopter happens to come over. So instead, we're going to counter condition, teach the dog don't run away, run to me.
Right.
Okay. So that's similar to what we would do here if we see that it's actually a problem, because obviously if he runs off, you could potentially lose your dog.
Right.
So we want a counter condition to go the other way.
Right.
So what we may see, knowing that information, is when you start working with him. Okay, e-collar is a stressor. It's physical. It's discomfort. Is if his stress response is nervousness in flight, we're going to see a bit of that. That dog you actually just saw, Rosie, she's a big flighter. Okay, and right now we're doing long leash heel, and she kept trying to run off towards the dad and stuff, and we kept overriding to make her run back to the hip. Okay, so if when you start with him, you see a lot of panting, salivating, shaking, it's not because e-collar made him worse. It's because he is a nervous dog, and you're putting him under stress, so now you're seeing more nervousness. But that's how we actually build confidence.
Yeah.
When people have a nervous, anxious, fearful dog, they tend to withdraw or keep the dog from or avoid any kind of physical consequence because they don't want to make the dog worse, which I understand. But dogs toughen up their puppies by nipping and biting and poking and prodding at them. Right? They give them physicality real young to toughen them up. But when people get their dogs and puppies and they see these things, they tend to lay off. So now the puppy gets more emotionally weaker, is how I put it. Okay?
Yeah.
So in order for him to learn how to handle stress, he has to be put through stress, but then also taught what to do in order to alleviate it. Okay? So when people see the stress response, they tend to lay off because they feel bad. And I always tell them, no. I was like, if you lay off, you're going to put the dog in limbo because you're going to expose him, but not working through it. So then he's constantly being stuck in this state of stress.
Right.
And by putting him under stress more often or more regularly, he goes, oh, this is not so bad. This is just how it is. And if I do this, I don't have to worry about it. If I don't do that, I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
As he learns how to control it. Okay? So it's like, you guys ever been skydiving?
No.
Do you think that's stressful?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So let's say you go skydiving once a year.
Oh,
You're probably not going to get over it. But if you go skydiving like once a week,
Right.
you're going to get over that pretty quick.
Right.
Because you're doing it regularly. Same thing with this.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's all part of the process. I don't know how it's going to work out. But just from what you're telling me, just calling that out, just in case you see that, you're like, oh, Jesse said this might happen, so I'm assuming it's normal. Okay?
Yeah.
Or you can take to it just perfectly fine. I don't know. We wouldn't know until we start. Okay?
He's like fine with a prong collar. We try to use one. I don't think it fits right. But that didn't bother. That hasn't bothered him as.
No, not really.
No. So that at least.
It's also not super effective, so.
So did you get like what I was mentioning earlier, where he's just kind of too tough with it?
Yeah.
I think so. I think.
May I see it? Do you have it?
Yeah.
I think I can control him much better with it than she can.
Yeah, he's stronger than me. Like he saw a rat yesterday, and
So that's the appropriate fit. That's the one that I would put on myself.
Yeah.
So with prong collar, part of the reason that it's not working is also just not using it correctly.
Yeah,
It's
that's
not
probably
High enough, right? And which that comes with skill. Like just over years of your using prong collar, you learn how to kind of keep the leash to keep it where it's supposed to be placed. But you can use that in conjunction with the e-collar.
Okay.
And the e-collar helps keep it up because it's usually pronged and remote underneath it. And that's only if let's say it's super flighty, like I think he may, right? Is on a flat buckle collar like this, if he gets flighty, he's got a lot more leverage. Okay, if you put him on a prong, it actually gives you a lot more leverage to counter him back. So we'd see how he does, and if I see like, oh yeah, he's super flighty, we pop the prong on him, and it'll just make your life easier. Now once you've conditioned him and we're not getting flight anymore, it's personal preference on whether or not you keep him on it or not. Okay? But ultimately, everything would be layered onto the remote because that's what you would have in order to control him on or off leash.
Okay.
Okay? Questions?
No.
So one of the most common questions I get is when does e-collar go away? Right? So in my book, when you need it, it doesn't. So if inside he's a great dog, you don't need it. But if outside, because there's a lot more stimuli, he's going to be off leash or anything like that, you would need it. Now it's not that you're always using it. It's just that it's present. Okay? Do you guys drive?
Yes.
Do you go on the expressway?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do you go the speed limit?
No.
I want to see
Yes.
What happens when you see a squad car?
Yeah.
I'll bleep that.
Yeah. What's that?
What happens when you see a squad car?
You slow
On
down.
the rigs.
Right? Because now there's a consequence.
Right.
So think of e-collar as a cop on a collar.
Okay.
Everybody, and it's crazy how often I get this argument of like, you shouldn't need these tools after you're done training. And I'm like,
No,
we're
human
supposed
world.
to be,
Yeah,
and we're supposed to be the superior species, right? And
Right.
we know better.
Right.
We know not to speed and all that stuff.
Right.
It's called opportunistic behavior.
Right.
Okay, so it's a part survival instinct. So like if there's a pond of water with an alligator in it, the animals nearby will not drink if they're aware of the alligator. But as soon as they see it leave, they'll come in and drink because they know there's no more threat, right? So it's opportunistic behavior, and that's where that comes from. So for him, he's like, hey, that cop's not here,
Yeah.
he's gonna push things a bit more.
Yeah.
Now, unless you're a trainer who's gonna, obviously, since the day they get their puppy, start training, do all the different types of training and all that stuff, and commit probably thousands of hours of training to your dog to get them to that degree, you're gonna be reliant on the collar, right, if needed. But again, it all comes down to the owner. If they're holding off a lot on the collar or not going high enough, they're the ones keeping them in that limbo. Because you'll hear me all the time, more remote, raise a number, no more remote, raise a number, right? So as long as you're doing that, you're being consistent, at some point he goes, crap, you don't play games. Like, I better just do it.
Right.
Is you find yourself using it less. And unless something spooks him, like a firework,
Right.
I'm not really worried about having control or not, okay? And if something happens, I can regain control. So like, I had a client that she used to take her dog to Oz Park, and someone threw a tennis ball, and her dog and another dog went at the same time, and they blew up into a fight. Okay, so she 127 is the highest it goes, 127 continuous, which is the harshest thing you can do, and her dog 180 and pulled right out of the fight. Okay, so then she called me, she felt really bad because her dog yelped, and she's like, was that correct? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, because if you would have let that fight go on, one, if people try to break up the fight themselves, they get bit.
Right.
Two, you don't know if your dog or that dog would have like bit each other, and then you got punctures,
Right.
and you gotta go to the vet, and you got antibiotics and potentially stitches.
Right.
Right? So I was like, it's absolutely, that was an emergency situation. Same dog, very high prey drive, was at Travis Park, playing with other dogs, and a rabbit ran right across the field. So she went from playing and saw the rabbit and just beelined after, and the rabbit started running towards the street. 127 continuous. Literally saw her dog jump in the air, hit the ground, 180 straight back to her. Okay, so stuff like that happens. So it's kind of like, okay, at the end of the day, my dog is really well trained, but at the same time, it's still a dog who's driven by instinct. Okay, but you have a means of overriding. Had another client in Lincoln Park, his dog was off leash. He's walking with his wife, and then he turned, and then his dog was nose to nose with a coyote.
Oh, God.
And his wife hated the remote when they first started. Okay. And then he was like, he sent me a message, he's like, Jesse, he's like, man, he's like, this happened with Emmett, saw a coyote, I called him and he 180'd off that coyote, like no hesitation. But he was like, thankful that he did e-collar because we had gotten dogs that level, but two, he was also like, even if my dog hadn't responded as quickly, I was gonna be quick on it because I knew I could make him return. So it's also just that like, yes, we train the dogs to a high degree, but if needed, we can make it happen. Okay, and it's usually with the recall. That's the one thing where people are like they're having to use the emergency function, as I put it, to get their dog to return. Okay, so it's just the way of the world. It's like telling a kid don't eat that cookie and leaving the room.
Yeah.
And then like the cookie. So it's just how it is. It has nothing to do with my skills as a trainer. It has nothing to do with how much time and effort you put into it. He's a dog. If you can get away with it, he's gonna try it. Okay. But other than that, yeah, if he's a great dog in the house, you don't need it. If you're gonna have guests come over. Maybe he's a little bit too friendly. And you need control because now there's stimuli. You pop it on him. Once everybody's there, everything's toned down. He's a good dog. You can remove it. You don't need it. If you need it, you can put him on place or whatever and keep him there while people are eating and all that stuff. Keep him out the way. And then when everybody leaves, take it off. You don't need it. Okay? Other questions? No. So this guy, he's obviously a pretty sizable dude. What is he, like 60?
Yeah, just under 60.
Okay. We expect him to get bigger?
I think he hasn't grown in a month, but yes.
Okay. Yeah, typically dogs hit their height at 6 months, and it's kind of like teenager face, tall and lanky, and then at a year they fill out. Okay, so he might put on a few more pounds. He could potentially grow a little taller. I've had that happen before, where the dog didn't grow until after 6 months. But the collar I put him on is the Black Edition dog truck. Maria would send you the information for that. You can get them on Amazon. It's meant for 70 pounds and over. So we're just doing that in anticipation if he does get bigger, you're not worried about it. But then also, even if it's more than his size, it just means since it's more output, lower number. Okay? So this way, whether or not it's an emergency situation where he does get bigger, I'm not worried about can you get control again. Okay? Because the other collar is 70 pounds and under. Okay? So the one thing I want people to factor in is it's not just the size of the dog, but also dogs which use the physicality. because they bite each other.
Right.
But then also in an emergency, if there's stress or anxiety or nervousness kicking in, you also have to override that.
Right.
So that's when more power comes into play.
Okay.
Okay. Ideally, both of you guys will be here for training. The first class or two are the most important, really. And after that, one of you has to miss a class or something, it's not the biggest deal. Because also we're recording things, so if you miss something, you can also go to YouTube and just watch the video that you missed. Okay. I can only take as far as you're willing to go. So again, if you're not willing to go to a higher number, if needed, we're going to get stuck. Okay. Every dog's level is different, size, personality, and that stuff matters. It's all just stuff that we figure out as we're training. And the rest is just you think about how much control you want. So you're 6, 9, or 12, right? 6 is walk my dog, go to the park. 9 is walk my dog, go to the park, go to restaurants, and then 12 is we go do hiking and dog beach and all that stuff with our dog. Okay.
Right.
So you pick and choose. I just show up and get you where you want to be. Okay. Any other questions?
No.
So Maria will get in contact with you.
Okay.
If you know you're set and like what you want, you can email her.
Okay.
We've had a very large number of consultations come through and people signing up.
Okay.
So she'll get back to you as soon as possible. So don't be concerned if it's been like a day or so. She's just trying to get to everybody in the order that they're coming in.
Okay.
But it is first come, first serve. So if you're like, hey, Maria, sign us up for 6, she just pops you in the line as opposed to you like waiting for her to respond. Okay.
Okay. I do have sorry, can I interrupt you with a question?
No, too.
Okay, so you were talking about classes. A girl I went to college with sent her dog here and they did like the board and train.
Oh, sure.
Do you have, like, we in a way I just want to send them away because we're so annoyed with them.
Uh-huh.
Do you have, like, preference? What do you think is better? Like, can you elaborate on that?
So, pros of in-person and cons. Pros, you walk away with a large wealth of knowledge, okay? Because I teach you, you make mistakes, I help guide you through it. I don't test the dog anymore, I coach you through everything.
Okay.
You leave, you make mistakes, you learn, you come back, we fix things, we learn more, and you go, right?
Okay.
So, but the con is it's slower,
Okay.
but you learn so much more.
Right.
The board and train, faster. We can get what you would get, like, so for us, 1 week of training here is approximately 3 weeks of training yourself. Okay. So the equivalent of 6 weeks would be a 2-week program. A 12-week program would be a 4-week program. Okay. Pro, we get it done a lot faster. Con, everything is tied to us.
Right.
So then we have to transfer to you. Okay. So the problem I have with board and trains is you send your dog one way, you get it back another way. So there's this big gap in the middle, okay? Now what we've been doing and what we are doing now because of that is each week, depending on how long he does, so if he does a 2-week, for example, at the end of the first week, or once we teach him all 6 commands, sit, stay, down, come, place, heel, okay? I put a video together, so we record the first session of every command so that you learn when you see how your dog responds from the get-go, okay? So if he's a nervous dog, you're going to see us working through the nervousness. Okay, we explain everything in the video and stuff. I make that video, put it together. It's usually around an hour and a half. I send it to you. You watch it, and then you can schedule a follow-up. The moment you get that video and you watch it, you can start applying things, and you can schedule the follow-up if needed. Okay. At the end of the second week, we send another video that's more of an overview of like your dog went from that place to this place at the end of 2 weeks.
Okay.
So you see the progress. And we review things again, and it's kind of like you see your dog being more fluent, okay? If you did like a 3-week and a 4-week, then like in the 3-week, we do a video where he's got distractions like dogs running around and stuff, and then the 4th week, we go out to Warner Park, and we do we do the video there.
Okay.
And those end up being like 20 to 30-minute videos. And we just started doing that since COVID started.
Okay.
Because everything switched to a lot of verbal instruction.
Right.
So I was like, people need a reference. That's why we started recording everything, because if you forget something, you go back to your video.
Right.
And with the board and trains, you have something that you can reference to. Okay. So The only other con would be just price. Obviously, it's gonna be more expensive for a board and train
Right.
versus doing it yourself.
Okay.
Also, if you do it yourself, you are gonna be out in the cold training.
Okay.
You know, it is winter time,
Yeah, right.
so keep that in mind as well.
Okay.
There's also the option of daycare and train,
Okay.
which is you would drop them off for a daycare day and you pick them up at the end of the day, so you wouldn't stay here overnight.
Okay.
But it's kind of like a board and train, but it's just not 24/7.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And that one, it's obviously less expensive than a board and train.
Right.
But there's also less follow-up, I believe, with the daycare and train because it has a lower rate.
Okay.
But you can always book like more private sessions, whatever
Okay.
that you would need.
Okay.
And so it's really personal preference.
Okay.
Okay.
At this point, I feel like, well, our biggest thing is he's now in the office, so he has less time. He used to be home, but now COVID, people don't care about as much. So, yeah, right. So that's why I'm like wanting to, I'm worried, one, it would fall mostly on me.
Oh, sure.
And I think we both need to, because I noticed when he would walk too much, like then Fitz would be bad with me.
Sure.
I don't want the favorite. So with the, I don't even know. What other question? I'm just like, but I don't know if I'm worried about us with the direction with.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, it would probably be a board and train or daycare and train is how we would want to do it. I think.
Yeah, I don't care. I'm just giving your options.
No, yeah.
And so who, Maria will tell us what exactly the programs are or what all that?
Right, so,
I saw online, but.
let's think of it this way. Out of the 6, 9, or 12, right, which is off the top of your head, where do you find yourself fitting?
Right, like where do we think we want this training to bring us?
Right, like I know you're leaning towards board and train, but if you were to do 6, 9, or 12, where do you find yourself within that? Is it walk my dog?
You want 12, but we know that.
Yeah, I want 12, but I'm not, that's,
Like,
it's fine.
6 or 9?
Yeah, 6 or 9,
Okay,
for sure.
so you're in the 2 to 3 week range for the board and train /
Okay.
daycare and train.
Okay.
Okay, now the board and train, of course, is here 24/7.
Right.
Mhm.
He's also here for an extra 2 days.
Okay.
The daycare and train, we do it by 5-day intervals, 5, 10, 15, 20. So it's either 10 to 15 day daycare and train or a 2 to 3 week board and train.
Okay.
That's where you're gonna fall,
Okay.
okay? Think of the 2 week or the 10 day as the walk my dog, go to the dog park.
Okay.
And think of the 3 week or 15 day as the walk my dog, go to the dog park, go to restaurants.
Okay.
That's the range it puts you in, okay? Now, the one command that's gonna take follow-up on your behalf is always gonna be the recall.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Regardless of the length of time you do.
Right.
Because 4 weeks is a blink of an eye, and we're not gonna have controlled context of like squirrels and rabbits and
Right.
stuff. That's gonna be things that unfortunately we can't replicate.
Mhm.
Right.
That, so you still have that on your shoulders, but we're gonna get you as close to that end result as possible.
Right.
Heel, sit, down, stay, place are the easiest stuff to transfer.
Right, right.
It's the recall that takes always a little bit of work, okay? So, I don't care.
Right. No, it's personal.
And the daycare, you drop them off at whatever, 8 or 9, you pick them up at 5 or 6, is that how it is?
Correct. Yeah, so he's just here during the day, we train him during the day and all that.
Just where the hell
Same
are
thing,
we?
it's just he's not 24/7, you know?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Because it's like open and close when we're training and stuff, so the moment he's out the crate, he goes potty and we start the day.
Okay.
So we do a lot of duration work here, meaning like sitting still and not moving. Because that's the one thing that people kind of overlook because it's
Yeah.
so easy to practice, but they don't do it.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of that here. So like if I tell him to down, he's not gonna move for 3 hours type of deal, okay? You do have to reinforce everything, so that is the other kind of con with daycare or board and train.
Right.
Is if he needs 85, we have no problem going to 85. But then when we hand it over to you and all of a sudden you're doing 85,
Right.
it's a different story. Because logic tends to hold back people. They're like
Right.
80 out of 120, they're like, wait a minute, that's like 3/4 of the power.
Right.
Right? So, but that's why we do the videos, because it helps you understand and explain where did 85 come from.
Right.
So when you come here, it's just, here you go. So as long as you're easy with, if you're comfortable with like, sure, Jesse says 85 and I trust him, and I saw the video, 85 it is.
Yeah.
Everything should just transfer very quickly.
Okay.
I like to think that our board and trains are very successful in the sense that everybody that we've worked with, they watch their videos, they do a class or two for the follow-up, and they're good.
Okay.
So let's say you use 2 out of 5 follow-ups. Those last 3 do not disappear.
Okay.
So in 2 years, hey Jesse, we got kind of lax with, Fitz and stuff like that. can we schedule up a follow-up to like tighten things up? Bring them on by.
Okay.
Okay, they don't expire, they last for the life of the dog.
Okay.
Other questions?
I think that's all mine.
No, I think that's it. I think, I think, yeah, we gotta decide if we wanna do daycare or board and train and,
We're a little lazy at this point, he's beating us down.
yeah, he's just totally worn us down with the.
No
He
worries.
had stomach issues at the beginning, so we were just
Yeah,
like.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we started off kind of behind the eight ball, so.
Who was your friend?
Her maiden name is Waymer, Allie Waymer, she's Winnie.
Oh yeah, with
Yeah,
Winnie.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
So
it's
she's-
funny because Winnie did the puppy board and train, which
Okay.
is not the same, but Winnie was younger.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was, cause she's only like a month older, but I know she sent earlier. So
Yeah.
I've been watching Winnie, and Winnie's very well behaved compared to Fitz. So that's what I was watching, okay.
Yeah. And if you want to get an idea, go to our YouTube channel, which you can access through our website. Just click on a new video and it should take you to YouTube.
Okay,
And I have like playlists, and you'll see when this is like board and train.
okay,
And then it'll say like, Winnie explanatory sessions, right?
Okay.
You click on it and it kind of gives you a feel.
Okay.
But every dog responds different to the collar.
right,
But definitely you would want to do a board and train, not a puppy board and train, because
Okay.
puppies are trained with food and gentle leader and stuff,
Yeah,
whereas he would get big boy training.
yeah.
So-
He's ready for the big leagues.
We're ready,
Yeah.
we're ready for a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure. So I would mull it over,
Okay,
think
Okay.
about what you want to do.
Okay.
There's no rush. Other than
Oh, there is a rush.
well,
Oh,
here you go.
but now that I think about it, because I have one puppy coming late February, we have a dog and puppy coming, I think, within the week, and we only take 4 at a time,
Okay,
because we want to make sure we have enough time to work with
Yeah,
all the
sure.
dogs.
yeah,
So there's still a 4th slot. We just finished one board and train that went home
okay,
yesterday, actually. So
Okay.
I freed up a spot.
Okay.
But yeah, you can talk to Maria. All the pricing is on the website, but she'll
Yeah.
also just kind of get back to you
okay,
and relay like, okay, here are the price points for the programs you're looking at.
okay.
And it's really just what do you want to do.
Okay.
Okay.
And just one more question. Board and train, when are they out of the crate working? Like what hours?
So Monday to Friday, it's 7 in the morning until we close at 10.
Oh.
Okay?
Oh, they're out, so they're only in a crate for 9 hours a day.
Right. Well, he'll get rest time.
Right,
Right.
but like a rest on like that.
Rest on that, and then like we give him time in the kennels to decompress. So his day, since he's social, you get to play with the dogs. He'll do duration work. We train him to go on a treadmill. He'll of course do his obedience training, and then there's also time to decompress in the kennel, which
Okay.
is just chill and relax and not have to deal with all that stuff.
I got
Right?
it.
So out the day in total, I would say maybe like 4 to 5 hours. Not even that, maybe 3 to 4 hours kennel.
Okay,
Time to just
okay.
decompress to rest.
Right.
But the rest of the time is training, and then the overnight stuff.
Okay, and daycare is almost the same thing, except we just pick them up?
Correct, and daycare probably be a little less
Yeah.
time in the kennel because we have less time with them during the day.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, other questions?
No, I think that's it. I think, the only one thing that he's like a little bit of an anomaly for him is that every time we brought him to like an outdoor restaurant or whatever, outdoor park, he's been like this,
Mm-hmm.
and very well behaved, so,
What park? Oh, like
yeah.
when we first got him?
Yeah, when we
That's
used
because
to
he
go
like
outside.
slept, but now we don't do anything.
Well, yeah, true.
Yeah.
So, he's, no, I think we'll think about what we wanna do and we'll talk to Maria and hopefully get
And I
going.
want
Yeah,
them to
and she'll
shape.
she'll send you the information for the collar, she'll send you the
Okay.
information for the programs, and then you just pick and choose what you want to do, and she'll handle everything from there.
Okay.
Awesome,
Okay?
awesome.
Anything else?
I don't think
No, I don't think so.
Awesome, well, it was a pleasure meeting you guys.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
Frank, you can move now.
Come on, Fitz.
I know, I have all your good stuff. I have all the good stuff. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
He's a good-looking dog.